Now that we're a few days removed from the NAR settlement announcement, we've had an opportunity for the dust to settle slightly and a few more logical takes, a few more just rational things being proposed and brought to the marketplace to where there's actual solutions being brought forth. Now, there's still a lot of questions, don't mishear me, with this settlement or this proposed settlement of $418 million. There's still some things that are needing to be defined. Right now, we just know several things, but in those several things that have been announced and things that are letting us know where we're going here in the coming months very, very quickly, there's still some things that we as real estate agents are getting wrong. I've been going through Reddit, I've been going through Facebook groups, I've been going through a lot of communities and seeing what the pulse is and also what people are saying. Just there's some folks that are making just some outlandish remarks. I'm going to show you one right now that we can actually use as an anchor point and really start looking at the things that are being misinterpreted and quite frankly wrong about what's already been stated. There's a few things that we do know of where we're going here in the coming months, and those things are the things that are being just completely not understood correctly. So those are the things that we're going to address. Here are the things that are actually being misinterpreted, that a lot of agents are getting wrong. So I want to make sure that we establish those, the limited things that we know, really get clarity on those before we can get into more substantial solutions, because there's going to be more questions that happen. But if we can't get the foundation right, if we can't get the premise right, we're not going to be able to get there. So let's check out a post. We're not going to go line by line, but I am going to read this to you, and then we're going to get into the 5 things that are going to help address not just this, but also the 5 major things that are being misinterpreted, or just things that agents are getting wrong about the settlement itself. So this is a post. I've removed the poster's name out of respect to them, but just seeing the how, I don't want to say they're essentially making they're creating an opportunity for themselves. We'll put it that way. Now, I don't necessarily fault them for it per se, but as far as getting the information right, that's the very first thing. So the very first thing was something that they didn't do. They didn't get the very first thing right. So anyway, this is a post that they made in their personal profile in an attempt to get clients. So NAR settlement announced. No explanation of what NAR means. But again, this is a public facing, this is an agent that's public, this is in their personal feed, not to a community group. This is in their personal feed, speaking directly to their assuming sphere of influence clients. Starting July 2024, sellers will no longer have to pay the buyer's agent commission. So that in of itself, that's incorrect. We're going to get into point number 1. We're going to actually address that. There's a lot of different things that are incorrect about that particular point. So I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to punt to the next part. And we're going to address that whole the concept. Just know that in of itself, that is incorrect in many different levels. Buyers. So addressing buyers. If you're on the fence about purchasing a home, hey, at least this agent's creating urgency. The more you wait, especially after July, will mean you will be having to pay more out of pocket, as you will now be starting to pay the buyer's agent commission starting in July. So are buyers going to potentially be paying more or paying out of their pocket up front? Yeah, that is a possibility. That's absolutely on the table. That is something that was trying to be prevented altogether. But as far as creating this whole sense of urgency and like, hey, purchase before July, before you have to do this is creating false scarcity, because that's not necessarily the tenor that we were looking for. This is not a joke. This is a monumental change in our industry that does not happen often. There's still time. If you've been thinking about a home purchase and are looking to get pre-approved, reach out to me ASAP. So this is an agent, and the whole getting pre-approved part, that was more, I'm assuming that they're going to refer them out to a preferred lender to get pre-approved so they can start looking for homes before the deadline of July for them. So okay, so here's what's actually happening, right? So mistake number 1, or huge thing that's getting misinterpreted, that's being wrong, is specifically in their first line. We're not only going to be dismantling this particular post, but as far as the 5 things that we're looking at, it's just going to be a little bit broader beyond the post. But the first thing is sellers cannot pay for buyer agents. Well, that regardless, well, for one, that could actually be happening right now. That has been happening right now. Sellers don't have to pay for buyer's agents. That's something that was not a requirement per se. Now, moving to the future, right? Looking at the different ways or looking into the future, looking post July, which was when the changes that have been presented by NAR's settlement that were shared with us on Friday, looking into July as a deadline, if you will, of when we're expecting these changes to happen, there's still ways, and there have been ways for sellers to compensate buyer agents. Now, it's not a requirement, but there are ways. So, number one, the traditional way that real estate has been being made, where a listing agent secures a contract with a home seller and they charge them whatever it happens to be. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 30, 100%, whatever they charge the agents, whatever they charge the homeowners, that's what they're going to charge. For our purposes, let's say they charge, actually, I'm not even going to give you an example. Just, you know exactly, whatever percentage you want to end up charging as a listing agent, you charge that. So once a listing agent secures that contract and or is walking through the listing appointment with the homeowner, they are sharing that, hey, a portion of this is going to go to my services. A portion of this is going to be offered to the buyer's agent. So the agent that brings the buyer, that is what's going to be cut. And that's actually on paper. That is, at least here in Texas, and I guarantee you that all the states out here, that is what's being represented. Like, it lets you know how much is going to, let's call it the house, the listing side, and also what's going to go to the buyer side. That doesn't change. That's not going away. What is going away is the offer or that percentage being reflected on the MLS. So as you know, when you log into the MLS, you are able to see how much is being offered to the buyer's agent, right? So that's a component that is already part of the MLS. It's no longer going to be part of the MLS, but that's something that you had. It's a blanket offer, basically. Any agent that brings that buyer, regardless of their experience, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their sex, regardless of their whatever, they are they are eligible for that compensation as long as they bring that buyer, right? So it doesn't discriminate. It's a blanket offer. That is what's being shared through the MLS. What is changing, it's not that the agent is no longer going to get compensated. What is changing, that compensation conversation is not going to happen on the MLS. It's off platform. That's the change. And that's the very first statement that was shared on this post. That's what was so grossly incorrect. Now, since I believe the agent has removed it, because I couldn't find it after that. So kudos to this individual to see the light, or has been educated on what's actually happening in their profession. But overall, that's what we're talking about. You can still get compensated as a buyer's agent the traditional way, the things that have been happening forever and for always, right? So a listing agent secures a contract. There's a portion that goes to the buyer's agent. There's a portion that goes to the listing agent. That's something that happens. Now, a second way that buyer's agents can get compensated is through the offers. So this is going to mirror more like a commercial transaction. So when you are working with the client, you can put in an offer, or y'all can put in an offer, submit an offer for a property, let's call it $400,000. And you're in that offer, you're going to present how much should be rebated back to the buyer's agent. So this is what we're offering for the house, and this is a seller concession. That's a better terminology. Seller concession, not rebated. Seller concession that goes to compensate my buyer's agent is basically what that offer would look like. So there, from that offer itself, in contingent on that actually happening, that's where an indirect way that the seller would be compensating the buyer's agent, if you will, through the seller concession, right? There's some limitations with that, which we do get into other videos, but just sharing with you how that would be a viable option. Now, the third way that this particular case, this doesn't necessarily address it in the post that we were talking about, but the third way that buyers agents will get compensated is directly from the buyers themselves, right, ahead of time, either through a fixed fee or through a percentage, whatever the case may be. So that is the direct compensation from the buyers. That's what's being mostly, I don't want to say feared, but that's in a way, that's what's mostly, this change has gotten a lot of pushback, has gotten a lot of, I guess we'll go ahead and use the word fear. The change has provided a little bit of angst and fear among the buyer's agents because of that. That has not necessarily been a conversation that has really been enforced. Now, that's something that's been in buyer agent contracts. I understand that not everyone in the entire United States offers or has buyer agency agreements, but that is something that is stated. This is my commission, and in the event that the property that we look for and we end up securing, in the event that it doesn't meet that commission, you are responsible for the rest of that. That's what buyer agency agreements have been saying for the longest time. So I recognize that. I think like 20, less than 20 states actually have those. And of those states that have them, they're not all required by the states. They're not all required by the brokers that you may be a part of. So these buyer agency, these written agreements are not something that a lot of agents are used to them, but many agents are not exposed, have not been exposed to them. So just wanted to make sure that that's the case. So as far as sellers cannot pay for buyer agents or the buyer agency, that is what's wrong. So just share the two ways that the sellers would be compensating, or through that side of the table, and then also buyers paying. Now, the second thing that's being a little bit, I don't want to say misleading, but thing that's being wrong, or something that's completely wrong, is that if you're not a member of NAR, it doesn't impact you. Regardless if you're a member of NAR or not, the way that you're doing business has changed. Now, you may not be required to do certain things that NAR is expecting of you, but think about what happens from the other side of the equation, from the client side, especially from the first-time buyers and buyers altogether. Well, they're reading these headlines from CNN, from Fox, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, who broke the news. All of these different publications are saying that, hey, your commissions are going down. That's the standard. That's what they're saying. The standard 6% commission has gone away, right? So regardless if you are a member of NAR or not, this impacts the way that you do business, because the general public, unfortunately, doesn't know the difference between a realtor and a non-realtor, right? So in theory, a realtor has a higher, one pays more, but has a higher code of ethics and all that other stuff, better branding, all the things that NAR, or NAR, to be politically correct, NAR, the things that they tout in terms of selling that membership, and also you getting access to the MLS. The general public doesn't necessarily know the difference between realtor and a real estate agent. Now, you can be a real estate agent and be a realtor, and not vice versa, but when it comes to the differences from the consumer standpoint, they don't necessarily know. So regardless if you're a member or not, this is going to impact the way that you do business. Now, something else to note is, even if you weren't a member of NAR, I keep saying NAR, even if you weren't a member of NAR, they did provide vehicles in their proposed settlement that will help you from a liability perspective. So that's something that we're going to talk about actually in point number 3. So thinking that this whole commission talk is over, that the whole suits are over. No, this is, if we're on the second act, we're on the third act. We are nowhere close to the final act at this point. So the commission suits, so this is the thing that number 3 that's wrong, if you will. The commission suits and all these things that are happening right now, they're far from over. This proposed settlement is still months away from being ratified. There's still potential for things to change in terms of the terms that have been proposed. The court would need to approve. Department of Justice would need to not get involved. There's a lot of different things that can happen between here and the actual proposed settlement going through. But even beyond that, there's still some pending litigation from folks that are not included in this settlement, which kind of goes to my earlier point. There are some carve-outs where, as one example, home services and all the affiliated brokerages, they're not included in this settlement. Now, you may be thinking, why are they not included? Well, we have to go back to the Sitzer-Burnett case. In the Sitzer-Burnett case, what happened was there's 5 entities that were included in that suit that were defendants. So you had Keller Williams, you had Anywhere, you had Remax, you had NAR, and then you had Home Services of America. Well, Anywhere and Remax, they settled before the verdict was rendered back in 2023. So they settled, they bounced. So Anywhere paid $83.5 million to settle suits. And then you had Remax do $55 million, I believe, to settle the suits there as well. Now, this was before it went to actual court. To the trial even began. Now, once the trial was had and the defendants, in this case, NAR, Home Services, and KW, once they lost, well, several different things happened. There was another lawsuit pretty much within hours that was presented that brought in a whole host of other brokerages, which we'll talk about here shortly, that were introduced into another lawsuit at that point, which basically a copy and paste template. So we know that it works here. So we're going to file here again in the Missouri courts, and we're just going to copy and paste. And the only thing we're going to change is the brokerage names and the LLCs. So that's essentially what happened. Anyway, once the suit was lost, Sitzer Burnett suit was lost, Keller Williams, towards the beginning of 2024, settled after that suit. So the verdict was rendered. It was $1.8 billion in damages, which could have been treble damages, which would put it $4 billion of potential payments. Well, Keller Williams said, no, we're not going to be doing that. So how about you take $70 million right here, right now, and we call it good? Well, Keller Williams proposed that settlement as well. And that left two entities in the equation. That was NAR and who? Home Services. So NAR or NAR, I keep saying that. NAR, who cares? NAR. So NAR is, so what NAR did was at this point, what happened on Friday, they proposed a settlement of $418 million to settle suits and all the copycat suits. Because you have to remember, NAR is every other week was being sued by every which way. They were named in over 20 suits at this point. So every other week, some other homeowners, including home buyer or home sellers, including some home buyers, were attempted to file suit and naming NAR along with the MLSs and other brokerages. Anyway, long-winded way of saying that the reason that they did not include Home Services, they being NAR, is because Home Services is still in that suit. So they could not include them in that particular suit. Now, what's my expectation? Well, my expectation is that this coming week, Home Services will probably settle. I don't have a magic number. In a previous video, I said my guess was going to be $35 million. No basis for that. Just that's my guess. But that's why Home Services and the affiliated brokerages cannot be included in this release of liability. Right? So you have that. Now, another exemption, another carve out is for the entities that do over $2 billion in commission. So this is basically any major brokerage that you think of that's out there, Compass, EXP, and all the other brands out there. Those are still in the potential. They still are looking to settle. Going back to the original point, NAR provided some different avenues, some different vehicles to make those entities have like a more simplified settlement, so a smoother path. So think of it like it was a rocky road, but they paved it. So it's like, hey, this is your offer. This is a route that you could take if you'd like. You can continue going on that rocky road if you'd like. It's still going to be rocky, but over here we're going to provide a little bit of a smoother sailing. But we just cannot do this for you. So we cannot include you in this because why? Well, the plaintiff said, no. I'm going to take $418 from you. Well, I'm sure they wanted way more. Well, $1.8 billion to be exact. Well, they wanted more. But they also did not want to let go of these other checks and these really write in your own amount checks, these blank checks that were available by the EXPs of the world, by the Compasses of the world, by the other major brokerages that they can go out there and collect a similar settlement to what they had with Anywhere, with Remax, with KW and all that stuff. Long-winded answer. I'm so sorry, but I'm trying to compact everything as possible, as tightly as I possibly can. But there's just so many different things to this. So I think that they're pertinent here to really understand what has been happening. So you are, one, better educated for sure, but two, you're going to get these questions from home buyers. You're going to get these questions from home sellers. So the more information that you have, you don't have to ramble and like go all in like I'm doing this right now, but giving you an understanding and catching you up from what's been happening in the last several months. Because keep in mind, here on the Agent Daily News on our YouTube channel, we've been doing daily briefs, majority of them on this particular situation since January 1st. So we have 40, 50 videos up at covering this type of topic already. So we've been in this. We've been in this for a while. And also something that has not been adjudicated, because most courts have actually been tossing these out, has been the buyer side. So we're talking about home sellers. What about the buyers? That's something that's still a question mark. Now, there have been suits that have been brought up by buyers themselves, by actual home buyers, as opposed to the home seller side. And they've been tossed out by the courts. A majority of them that I'm aware of, they've been tossed out by the courts, really looking at what happens with this one and saying that the people that were impacted per se was actually on the home seller side, not necessarily the home buyer side. So that's why that's still a question mark out there, in my opinion. So although buyer suits, don't mishear me, attorneys would love to get as many buyers on the buyer side to come in here and do this. Hopefully this particular case will blanket all the commission suits, but I don't necessarily think that that's the case. So I could be completely off base. I'm not an attorney, but giving you that perspective from all the legal papers that we've been reading, and also all the responses from the judges that kick out these buyer suits because for lack of standing, is what essentially the terminology is. All right, so the fourth thing that's just incredibly incorrect is that listing agents are not affected. You're going to see this quite a bit. You're going to see either listing agents almost taunting buyer's agents that hey, this is business as usual. Business as usual is what you're seeing quite a bit. You're also seeing, hey, that's why I got on the listing side, list to last. You see a lot of different people saying that that's going to be the end all be all, right? So focus more than ever and double down and quadruple down and lean in on getting listings. Well, that's not going to answer all of your questions. Now, is that going to help you significantly and build a more stabilized portfolio? Possibly, but it's not going to be the end all be all, because listing agents are also impacted in different ways. One, you're going to have this conversation up front with your home owners. And when that door closes behind you and you're in that living room and doing that listing presentation, this is going to come up. So it's going to be incumbent upon you to share this type of information, because a lot of, the potential of how much that homeowner is going to get is going to be dictated on this particular conversation, and also for sure how much the buyer's agent is going to get or not get, and how they're going to need to maneuver their conversations from the buyer side as well. So both are going to be implicated in different ways, but also just think about it from this perspective. Once you sell that home, are you leaving those former homeowners homeless? Of course not. You're helping them purchase a home, right? So these conversations you're essentially looking at in many different ways, in terms of whenever you're having conversations with these homeowners, well, presenting, hey, if we offer a certain percentage to a buyer's agent, we're most likely going to get more applicants, more people that are capable of purchasing this particular home. But then you also have to consider, well, when we go out there and search for your home, I also expect to get compensated for my services. So that's a very important conversation that needs to be had. So if you, from the listing agent, you for sure are going to need to have these conversations. It does impact you directly, and it's something that a lot of listing agents are not necessarily keeping in consideration. Again, there's a mindset of all things, I'm just going to continue doing business as normal. Well, if you continue doing business as normal, it's going to be a little bit challenging, because your clients are not going to allow you to do that, given that they're going to be asking these questions that they're seeing from CNN, from Fox, from MSNBC, and all the entities out there saying that the standard 6% commission is no longer the case. Well, it was never the case, but that's a court battle that we lost already. So I'm not going to harper on that. I'd be beating a dead horse at that point. And then as far as buyer's agents going away, that of course is not going to happen. It's going to look different for sure. 100% it's going to look different. It's just going to allow us an opportunity to adapt, pivot, and actually just do things a little bit different. So buyer's agency is not going away. That's something that a lot of individuals that are going to be pessimists, that are going to look at the sky is falling, that are going to just that's their personality, and that's what's being manifested right now in social media. So is it going to look different? Of course it's going to look different. So we're not going to go back to the 1990s, at least in a way it seems that we were kind of going back to the 1990s where buyers did not really have representation. You just had the listing side and or a sub-agent that was actually working for the listing for the homeowner, and the buyer was coming at it solo. But we're not going to go back to those days entirely, but we are going to go back to a place where, unfortunately, a good amount of buyers, especially the ones that are strapped for cash, may find themselves at a disadvantage and are having to face the home purchase by themselves. That's unfortunate, but as far as the buyer agency going away, that's not going to happen. Hopefully this helped in some way. There's 5 things that we're talking about. One, that the seller cannot pay for buyer's agents. We talked about that already, that the seller can actually pay for buyer's agent. That does not change. If you're not a NAR member, it doesn't affect you. It absolutely affects you in the way that you do business, and also implications from a liability perspective. Commission cases are over. They are far from over. We're on Act 2, possibly Act 3. There is still a good amount of adjudication that needs to happen, and that listing agents are not affected. You are for sure affected. You're going to need to have these conversations. You need to understand what's happening, what's not happening, so you are better informed, and your clients are also better informed, because I'd much rather you share what's actually happening than allow the mainstream media and to dictate what the narrative is, because right now they are winning. The narrative war is being won by them, and it doesn't look as favorable for us. And as far as the 5th thing that is wrong right now, that a lot of agents are getting wrong, is that the buyer agency is going away. I appreciate the heck out of you. Let me know if you have any questions down below. What should have I included? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll see you on the next one.